So what is burnout? Well, burnout is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged stress, typically related to work or caregiving responsibilities. It is characterized by feelings of overwhelming exhaustion, cynicism, detachment, and a sense of reduced accomplishment or effectiveness. Burnout can manifest in various ways, including fatigue, irritability, decreased motivation, and difficulty concentrating. It often occurs when an individual feels overwhelmed by the demands of their roles and a perceived lack of control or support in managing those demands. Burnout can significantly impact one's well-being, productivity, and relationships if left unaddressed. So that is the internet's definition of burnout. And today we are discussing on the Real Talk with Rhi podcast all things burnout. Signs of burnout to watch out for, why we feel burnout, and ultimately what we can be doing about it. So hi, thanks for joining me on this week's episode. I am Rhi from Real Talk with Rhi. You may have heard from my voice, it's sounding a little bit odd. If you are not new around here, I don't normally sound like this, as you'll know. But if you are new, this is not my normal voice. This is my bizarre sore throat scratchy voice, so you're just going to have to bear with me. I apologise for how I sound, but I can't help it at the moment, so apologies for that. We're going to press on anyway and talk about burnout. And let me know if in the comments, if you're watching on the video podcast over on YouTube, hello, then let me know if you have ever experienced any of these signs of burnout, if they're familiar. And do you know what? If you're just listening on the normal podcast version, you can tag me over on stories at Real Talk with Rhi podcast or my Mummy for UK Instagram, and we can pick up the conversation over there. So signs of burnout: feeling incredibly tired, the kind of tired that sleep does not fix. This can be a sign of burnout to look out for. It can be decreased immunity. So when you get ill all the time, she says, croaking at you into her microphone. It was really funny actually, because I had a comment from a mum that follows me when I said that I was starting to come down with something. And she said, Rhi, I've followed you for years and I've always wondered, why does she get ill so much? And then my child started school and brought home all the germs and I got it. So yeah, that's the large reason for getting ill a lot as a mum, partly because the children bring home all the germs and partly then because you're running around like an idiot and not getting enough rest and things. So we're going to address all that. But yeah, shout out to all those mums that actually get ill more than their kiddos, because I think that might be me. So the next sign of burnout that, or a sign that might mean you are burnt out or heading towards burnout, is insomnia or other sleep issues. So if you are struggling to sleep, your mind's racing, all that kind of thing, it could mean that you're heading towards burnout. So just look out for these signs, and then we'll talk about what to do if these signs resonate with you. Emotional exhaustion can be a sign of burnout, feeling just drained and like we haven't got anything left to give. Does any of this resonate? Have you ever felt this? Reduced performance, so decreased productivity, can happen when you are feeling burnt out. And often if you're feeling burnt out because you've got so much on, there is nothing more frustrating than thinking, I'm being less productive, I need to be doing more. And that can really add to the burnout. I know I felt that so many times. If you're heading towards burnout, you can just feel like reduced satisfaction in just day-to-day tasks, just feeling a bit meh about everything, and just withdrawal away from responsibilities in your life, that kind of thing. All of these things could be signs of a number of things, but they could be signs that you are heading towards feeling burnt out. So really, if this is you, if you're feeling any of these things, you're thinking, wow, okay, I might be close to burning out here. And ultimately, that's not what we want, because especially as parents, and not all of you out there listening, but I think most of the people that tune into the podcast and most of the people that watch my YouTube channels generally watch because they are mums themselves. And I think that tends to be most of you. I don't know. Let me know if I'm wrong. Let me know if you are not a mum, and if you're tuning in anyway. I mean, hi, everyone is welcome here. But I think the majority of you out there are mums. And I think the majority of us mums have felt this at some time. I think as mums, we are stretched quite thin. I think we're a generation. I say we're a generation. I'm assuming everyone's my age. I think a lot of you, some of you are older, a lot of you are a lot younger. But I am 40 now, the big 40. And I think that we have been a generation of women empowered to do anything. We can do anything. We don't have to be restricted by gender roles. You know, we can shoot for the stars and we can achieve whatever we want to achieve. But we're also a generation of women that were raised to have this belief that we need to also do everything and be super mums. And I think the gender roles in the home, largely when I speak to a lot of other women of a similar age, they also feel like everything feels their responsibility at home. So we can do it all as long as we have 48 hours in the day. We can be the perfect mums and have the perfect careers. And realistically, how is one human supposed to give 100% to two full-time jobs, being a full-time mother and a full-time job? How is that possible? Yet we've been told this is what's expected of us. And then we wonder why we burn out. And it's like, what? Burnt out? Me? Trying to do two full-time jobs? Yes. It's quite easy to burn out when we have those expectations from us, from society and from ourselves. So speaking from personal experience, I definitely was brought up thinking that all of the sort of child caring responsibilities, if I didn't shoulder the burden of those, then I would be a bad mother. I'm not saying this is the truth. In fact, it's very unhealthy. That was my kind of subconscious belief from my upbringing. But then also I want to be setting this great example for my children about, you know, being able to do what you want, to make your own choices for work and earn money. And I want my children to know they can have the careers they want. And therefore I want to demonstrate to them that I can, you know, if I can do it, you can do it too. And it's been a real challenge to try and fit all of those things into 24 hours and not burn out. What can we do about burnout? When the first thing we can do is acknowledge that we are feeling close to burning out. And I think I'm really guilty of just pushing through. And this is both physically and, you know, mentally, emotionally. For example, one of my early warning signs for my body then, one of my weak points is my throat. And I know that when I am under the weather, stretched, close to burnout, I suppose, I sound like this. I have a very croaky voice. My tonsils become massive. It seems to be like the weak point of my body. And when I'm coming down with something, that's my early warning sign. And traditionally, I'm like, well, push through. If you watched my Disneyland Paris vlog series from February of 2023 over on my Mummy of Four's Disney channel, halfway through the week, I sounded horrific. But there was no way I wanted to spoil the trip for my children. So it was a case of push through, caffeine and paracetamol and push through. And the children had an amazing trip. I achieved my goal. And when we got home, I was so ill. I was just absolutely flat out ill, full on flu. And maybe if I'd given in a bit earlier, that wouldn't have happened. But at the time, I felt like that wasn't really an option. So did I make myself ill by pushing through? I can't say for definite, but I don't think it helped. So I think the first thing we can do is acknowledge our feelings. These can be physical things, like noticing, okay, I'm feeling under the weather now. I need to slow down. What is my body telling me? My body is telling me to slow down. And it's very much, if you don't make time for your wellness, your body will force you to make time for your illness, and it will tell you to sit down. And I know that my body does that from time to time. And I go from being slightly under the weather to fevers and shivers and aching from head to toe and just full on, you know, I get full on flu. I really should have the flu jab actually, because I've had it so many times. But is that because I'm susceptible to it or because I don't listen to my body? Probably the second one, to be honest. Other than that, I would say I'm reasonably fit and healthy. So acknowledging our feelings, both physical feelings, but also emotional feelings and, you know, our actual feelings inside us as opposed to just our symptoms. And when we can acknowledge, okay, I am feeling close to burning out. I am feeling drained. I am feeling stretched. I'm feeling like I'm not perhaps coping as well as I should be. Just the act of calling that out can be a massive help. And I am going to take a sip of drink now because, you know, throat. Okay. Sorry, apologies again for the voice. It is, I am struggling today. Okay, so acknowledging our feelings has got to be step number one. Acknowledging that there is a struggle going on. Maybe we've got too much on our plates. Maybe we're not feeling as well as we should. The next thing to do is perhaps look at what might be causing the burnout. So is it literally germs? Is it you are feeling under the weather and you're not going to be able to keep going at the pace of your normal life while you're feeling under the weather? Is it that you've got too many responsibilities? Is there something especially, using my words properly, especially stressful going on at work? Is there something that you're feeling stretched, you're not feeling supported enough in the home? A lot of these things can really help to brainstorm them and just jot them down in a journal, just grab a little notebook, plain piece of paper, a note in your phone, whatever it might be, and just jot down anything that could be impacting why you are feeling less than fully happy, less than fully energized, why you may be on the way to burnout. Because noticing these things, the earlier we can notice these signs, then the better care we can take of ourselves. And I think ultimately we worry that, everyone else has got to come first. We've got to put our children first. And yes, as mothers, that's how we feel. But there's a reason on an airplane they tell you to put on your own oxygen mask first. Instinctively, you want to look after your children first. But if you do not put on your own oxygen mask first, and you've got 3 children to take care of, you might get 1 oxygen mask on your kids, and then you pass out due to lack of oxygen yourself and don't get it on the other 2 children or yourself. And then ultimately, what good do you then if you're unconscious? So you take this into real life. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't prioritize your own self-care, and then you are absolutely flat out with flu or burnt out, and like, what good are you to your children? So sometimes it's difficult to prioritize self-care for ourselves for reasons like, well, I need it. And if you struggle to prioritize it for yourself, then sometimes we can legitimize it and convince ourselves to do it if we can convince ourselves it's for someone else. And sometimes that's an easier way to do it. Ultimately, it will achieve the same thing. And it's mad, really, because we should be able to do things for ourselves just because. But I know, sticking my own hand up here, I find it much, much easier to say, well, I'm doing this to take care of myself so I can look after my children. That feels more legitimate to me, and that feels easier to justify than I'm just doing it for myself. And that's probably very wrong. And I never want my children to grow up, be parents themselves, and not be able to take care of themselves just because I want my children to always be okay. And I want them to take care of themselves, and I want them to be able to put themselves first. But I feel like being able to prioritize self-care so that you can look after someone else is at least a step in the right direction. Does that make sense? Does anyone else resonate with that? So identifying the issues that are causing burnout is a big one. And sometimes it might surprise you. And sometimes it might just be so many little things, so many things on our cognitive loads. And that's why we're feeling burnt out. So sometimes putting systems in place can really, really help. So for me, it is dumping off my brain dump stuff into my planner. That really helps. And making sure that everything that is currently whizzing around my head is put somewhere, and that stuff is not going to disappear and I'm not going to forget about it. Having it written down so that it is those things are not going to be forgotten about, and I can deal with them one by one, can really, really help me. I don't know if it's a mum brain thing, but often I feel like my thoughts are like absolute spaghetti and there's just so much going on. And that can in itself be quite stressful. It's just all the stuff that we've got to juggle and we've got to remember. And something as simple as writing down all these things can really, really help. Taking breaks can really, really help. And even if it's just short breaks, a few minutes to yourself before you go and pick the kids up, take a few minutes to have some time for yourself, to separate out between your working time and you're going to pick up the children time. Taking a few minutes to yourself after they've gone to bed, after you finish running around like an idiot. Taking these breaks is so important. It can be really hard to schedule them in, but ultimately by scheduling in these breaks, we can be better parents. And if that's the only way you can justify it to yourself, then go for it. So exercise is one that I always used to think, well, it was like a selfish thing to do. This sounds mad now, but I did used to think that when I was really stretched for time, then whenever my children were napping, I should either be working or, doing productive things. And I thought, well, exercise isn't productive. I could be using that time as a work from home mum to work while my children are asleep. So if I'm not with my children mumming, I should be working. And I just realized that the more time I prioritize for exercise, the less I get ill. So imagine how much I would get ill if I didn't bother to exercise. So I get ill less when I exercise. My immune system behaves itself more. But also I need physiotherapy less. So I think it's just from having to carry the children around for such long periods of time and not having breaks in between my babies. So, for example, friends of mine would have a baby and then they would go back to work. So think of a friend of mine off the top of my head, so who had babies around the same intervals as me, so 2 years apart for the girls. She had, she'd have a baby and then would go back to work. So someone else would take care of the baby, their parents or childcare, and they would have some time doing office work where they were not physically lugging around babies. So because my only work's been from home, I was still physically lifting and carrying babies, and I've ended up with like neck and lower back problems. And I'm assuming it's just from not putting down my children for many years at a time. Sorry, kids, not like actively blaming you if you're listening. But yeah, I think ultimately I have sort of low back and neck problems as a result of standing. You can't see me if you're listening, but standing with one child on a hip, doing stuff with the other hand, and kind of like in an S shape. If you've got a baby balanced on your hip, then you're jutting one hip out, you're counterbalancing with your neck. It causes some issues. So when I prioritize exercise, specifically yoga and Pilates, then I don't end up with neck problems as often. And when I stop prioritizing exercise, I end up having to phone my physio for an emergency appointment because I can't look left. And that's not good for anyone because I am in extreme pain. And then am I really being the best mother I can be if I'm in that pain? No, I'm not. So prioritizing exercise is really important for looking after your own mental and physical health. But for me, the line I struggle to walk, I think, with exercise is when I am teetering on burnout or illness, how far to push myself. So when is it like, give myself a kick up the backside, do the exercise, stop being lazy, Rhi, and do it because you'll feel better after it. And when is it actually, nope, you're teetering on burnout and illness now, so pushing yourself to do a hard workout will actually make you worse. And that's a line I really do struggle to walk. I think the answer is, I guess, listen to your body and be kind to it. And gentle yoga, unless I'm actually feverish, is probably never really harmful. But then anything a lot more strenuous, perhaps, I do try and avoid when I am sounding like this and a bit grim. So prioritizing self-care is really, really, really important when you are approaching burnout or feeling burnt out. And this can look like, I'd say probably one of the most important things is sleep. Sleep deprivation, and you'll know this if you've ever been in charge of a small baby, is legitimate torture. And the only way I ever got through the sleep deprivation with my tiny new babies is because I love those tiny babies so very much. And that's the only thing that got me through it. But not having enough sleep ultimately is actual torture. So by limiting the amount of sleep you have when you are burnt out, it's really going to exacerbate the situation. Sleep is so important. And ultimately, it's just maths. And prioritizing the amount of hours sleep that your body needs, you just need to figure out what time you need to get up in the morning, and you need to count back however many hours sleep you need before that. So if your body needs 8 hours, you need to get up at a certain time. You need to be asleep 8 hours before that, or if it's 7 hours before that, or whatever your body needs. Your own body. Figure this out, how much sleep you feel right on. And ultimately, it's making sure that you've gone to bed in enough time to fall asleep by that time, not going to bed at that time or not going upstairs at that time. If you think, right, okay, I'm going to have to go to bed by, I'm going to have to sleep by 10 in order to get the amount of sleep I need, so that's appropriate for the time I need to get up, then going upstairs to start showering, clean your teeth and stuff at 10 is not going to cut it, because you're not then going to be asleep till maybe 11. So if you need to be actually sleeping by 10, personally, I like to shower pretty early in the evening, because if I shower just before bed, it wakes me up too much and then I can't sleep. Maybe a bath is better, a bit more calming, but actually showering, I find I'm like, oh, awake, alert, not ready for sleep. So personally, I like to shower quite early. I shower at the same time I bath the girls. I find that really easy. And then I can kind of wind down after that. I know I still haven't got a lot to do before bed, as in makeup's already off, hair's washed if that needs doing. And then by the time I know I start to feel sleepy and I go upstairs, I can read for a bit and then go to sleep. So prioritizing sleep, it's a difficult one because I think if you haven't had much time to yourself in the day, the temptation is to just sit there and binge Netflix for ages, to feel like you've had some downtime. But ultimately, depriving yourself of sleep is just going to really exacerbate that burnout. So if you are aware that you're feeling stretched, even a few nights of early nights can just feel so healing. Clean eating is a boring one, but nourishing our bodies with the right food really can help, especially when we're feeling ill or burnt out. Getting outside. Now the spring is a spring. It's starting to spring. The spring is a springing. So getting outside is going to become easier. But certainly if you like work from home like me, the temptation can be not to go outside and just to get on with what you need to do. Or if your children are not of school age yet, you don't have to do school runs and things. It can be very tempting, especially when the weather's grim, to just stay in. But actually getting a bit of fresh air, even a few minutes of fresh air and sunlight can make such a difference. And I haven't actually got one, but I am tempted to invest in a SAD lamp, SAD lamp to get some of that that light on my face when the weather is just too grim outside, because I've heard a lot of very positive reports. Have you got one? Have you tried one? Is it worth it? Vitamins can be a nice, easy thing to do to look after your body, to feel like you're doing something really simple, a really quick fix. Personally, I'm such a child. I am far more likely to take my vitamins if they are those chewy ones that taste like sweets. So whatever works for you, that works for me. Obviously, hydration, she says, reaching for her cup. Super important. I mean, we are mostly water, aren't we? I've got another auntie, not the auntie that you guys always see in the vlog, my other auntie. She always says, whatever is wrong with you, chances are it's dehydration. Headache, it's probably dehydration. Tired, probably dehydration. Whatever is wrong with you, hydrating is going to make it a little bit better, burnout included, because if we do not fuel ourselves with the water we need, we're going to feel pooey. It's just the truth. So grab yourselves a nice big cold cup, fill it up, and make sure you drink it all before the end of the day. Okay? So important. Something that really helps me when I'm feeling low, burnt out, and this is something that's in a way quite specific to what I do for work, and in another way not. So it's just creating like a little place to store positive things to look at in one place. So this could be a certain folder in your photos, in your phone. It could be a note, it could be journal entries, it could be a scrapbook. But if you just keep a little place of positive things. So for me, if I want to look at positives in the family, I can look through my favourites folder on my photos at all our beautiful memories of trips and things. And then I look at them and I can be like, oh, look how lovely that was. Look how lovely that was. So if I'm feeling a bit down, then that can really cheer me up. And then a little bit more specifically from a work situation, when I'm feeling like, oh, what's the point? What am I going to say? Am I adding any value on my podcast? Is anyone going to want to bother watching these YouTube videos? Like, oh, why am I doing it? I'm not helping anyone. What's the point? Then I've got a folder where I've taken screenshots when people have left me really beautiful comments. And when I'm having a bit of a, oh, what's the point? I'm not getting anywhere. What's this for? And it's not helping anyone. Then I can read through those comments and they absolutely light me up. So if you've ever been one of those lovely humans, by the way, that's left me one of those lovely comments saying, oh, that one of those people that as soon as they get back off the plane has said, Rhi, I just had to message to say that thanks so much for your Disney vlogs. They really helped make our trip magical. I can't tell you how much that means to me. Or someone that's bothered to message me to say my children's just been, my children, I told you I'm not feeling 100%, my word's not coming out right. My child has just been assessed and they've just been given a diagnosis for whatever it may be. And it was only because of your videos that I had the courage to pursue it. And I'm so glad that I did, because now I can get my child the support they need and I know our lives are going to be easier. And thank you for that. And these messages where people have said thank you because of something I've said, maybe it's something little, maybe it's just thank you for the suggestions you've given me about organising uniform. It's made our mornings go smoother. But knowing that something I've bothered to say on the internet when I'm talking to myself in my house has made a difference in someone's life just really makes me think like it is for something. So if anything I say helps just one person, then it feels worthwhile, it feels like it's worth keeping going. So I'm sure there's way that you can apply that in your own life. Obviously, they're just looking through a favourites of beautiful family photos and things is going to make you feel all warm inside. But maybe in your job, you could put together like a little screenshots of emails where you've had praise for doing a certain project well, where you've won a certain award or anything like that. Perhaps you've succeeded in a certain hobby, or you've achieved something personally. Maybe you've been going to the gym for an actual year and you've actually been going. So maybe in that screenshot folder is like your gym membership renewal, and you've actually done it for a whole year, and that's an achievement that you're really proud of. Anything that you think, yeah, do you know, I did that. I am good at this. I am able to stick at things. I am worthwhile. Anything that builds you up and makes you remember that you are capable of whatever you put your mind to. Put it in that little screenshot folder. And when you're feeling a bit low, a bit like, oh, I can't do this, you can look at those photos, those screenshots, and think, well, actually, I am already doing it. It's like when you're in labor and you're like, I can't do it anymore. And the midwife says to you, but you are doing it. Like, you are doing it. It feels like you can't, but you're already doing it. That can really, really help. Decluttering can help sometimes with burnout. So just stay with me with this one. If you are feeling close to burning out, those declutters I do, where I empty out an entire room and cause chaos and need to invest lots of energy into decluttering, that sometimes is perhaps not the best idea, because that's quite overwhelming when you're already feeling quite burnt out. Like, I'm feeling a bit grim now. Today is not the day to be tackling a massive project. However, maybe I'm just going to declutter my handbag, and I feel like that's a quick win. That might make me feel a bit better. That might make me feel a bit more in control. One thing you could declutter is your calendar. You can go through your calendar and be like, do I really need to do that? I'm feeling stretched at the moment. I'm feeling like I haven't got any downtime. I haven't got any time to myself. What can go? What can I say? Do you know what? I know we're supposed to meet up for drinks with a friend or whatever this weekend, and I'd love to, but you know what? I'm going to have to prioritize just sleep this weekend. So can we bump it a week? Declutter your calendar for anything that is not going to fill you up. Equally, do not go saying no to things that would fill you up. So if actually going to spend time with a friend to just chat and get things off your mind is really going to bring you away feeling so much better, that is not something you want to bump from your calendar in favor of something quote unquote productive. Because if that experience where you're catching up with a friend is going to leave you feeling lighter, less burdened, heard, that is actually going to help you feel less burnt out, even if you have not spent the day doing something productive and you feel like you've got a lot on your list. So it is that balance of decluttering things that aren't going to help to fill your cup and making sure you're still prioritizing time to make human connections and to catch up with people that make you feel better and built up. When you are feeling burnt out, it is a really good time to look for easy wins. So it is not the time to experiment with new recipes with feeding your family, unless cooking is something that absolutely fills you up. If it is, knock yourself out. It is not the time to take on massive decluttering projects. It is time to look for the quick wins. It is time to do the quick cleans, not the deep cleans. It is time to make the easy meals, not the complicated ones. It is time to just take shortcuts, because we are allowed to take shortcuts. And if there is ever a time to take shortcuts, it's when you are feeling close to being burnt out. It is important to ask for help and accept help when it is offered. This is something I know I find really challenging. I am fiercely independent. I know my children. I don't know if it's maybe because they've always had additional needs, perhaps, that I've struggled to ask for help, because I kind of feel like I'm the only one that knows how to, or what their needs are. So I've struggled to ask for help and rely on things like lift sharing and stuff the way that I see other friends do when they're parents of neurotypical children. I don't know whether it's because we don't have a lot of extended family support, so I'm not used to relying on other people, but I do know that asking for help is something I personally really struggle with. So it's something I'm working on, okay? It's something I'm working on. I'm far from perfect. I'm aware of it. So surely awareness is the first step. More drink. Because, health, hydration, etc. And then I guess when you're burnt out, it's like looking at what is in your control, what can you make changes to, and what is out of your control, and knowing the difference. So these things are in my control. I can control my environment. And maybe when you're feeling burnt out, having a quick cleanup can make you feel that much better. That is something you can control. You can control if you've cleaned up, and then you can think, right, I've achieved that. You can get that quick win and feel a lot better. And what is out of your control? Maybe there are things out of your control that are impacting your children, that are impacting the news, whatever it might be. And knowing the difference between those things we can control and those things we cannot control, and maybe even listing those out into columns of when we're brain dumping of all the things that are stressing us out. Having those columns where you can tell the difference. These are the things I can control, and these are the action steps I can take. And these are the things that are out of my control, and that's okay. Knowing the difference can really, really help. Knowing you're not alone is important. I think sometimes when we're feeling burnt out, it's so easy to look on social media and see everyone's picture perfect lives, and you just think, why am I the only one that feels like a mess? Why does everyone seem like they're okay, and why am I the only one struggling? Spoiler alert, you're not. You're not the only one struggling. If other people are struggling and their lives look perfect on social media, it's just because they're not showing it, because they choose not to, they can't, whatever. But just because they're not putting it online doesn't mean it's not true. Everyone is struggling with something, I promise you. And a lot of people are struggling with the same things that you are. Circling back slightly to the asking for help, purely because my scattered brain forgot to mention it. By asking for help, this can look for like a few different things. And asking for help, it could be asking for help with lifts and things with your children. It could be asking your teacher and your child's teacher for additional help if your child's struggling with homework or with something in school. It could be asking for help when you're on a flight and you want extra help from the airline staff, making sure your children are happy during the flight. I'm actually better at asking for help for things like that, things like on an airline for my children, or asking for additional help from support from the school and things, than I am at asking for help for myself. Actually, I'm just kind of processing and realizing this right now. But yes, I'm okay. I think I'm okay at asking for help when it comes to my children. I'm not very good at asking for help for me. But I think it is important to mention at this point that if you are really struggling, then speaking to your GP or health provider, if you are really struggling with your mental or physical health, it's just so important, because if your child had something wrong with them, mental or physical, you'd take them straight to the doctors, wouldn't you? You know you would. You'd be like straight down there. Yet we soldier through. Why is that? Why do we not care for ourselves the way that our children are cared for by us? And ultimately, in order to be a good parent to them, we have to be good parents to ourselves. So if you have something going on in your life that is affecting your mental or physical health, and it's something that if your child said, Mum, I am feeling, I have wrong with me, whatever it might be, if you would say to your child, I'm taking you to the doctor, or you need to go to the doctor if they're an adult, then you need to take that advice. And yes, I am speaking to myself as much as I am to you right now. I'm not very good at taking this advice, but please, if it's something that you feel you would advise a friend to go to the doctor for, if they were struggling with their mental or physical health, you would advise your child to go to the doctor for when they are older, or you would take your child to the doctor for that reason. You know, if they were struggling with the same thing as you right now, you need to go yourself. Please remember that. And ultimately, be kind to yourself and stop beating yourself up. Stop beating yourself up for struggling. Stop beating yourself up because you feel overwhelmed, because ultimately it is compounding the burnout. It's making it worse. It's making it so much worse, and it's not helping you. I think we are very critical of ourselves, and we are living in a world where there's so much information online about all the different ways that our parents messed us up, all this information how we need to be breaking the cycle, and all this information about all these different ways that we could potentially mess up our children, and we're like, panic, beating ourselves up. But I think ultimately, as long as we have this awareness that we're trying, this awareness that we're constantly trying to better ourselves, that does make us good parents. If you care enough to worry, oh my goodness, am I doing a good enough job? It probably means you are, because it means you're trying. And you need to remember that. And you know what? I probably do too. So, in the interest of taking my own advice, I'm going to stop talking now because my throat is incredibly sore. But thank you for sticking with me and listening to my very bizarre sounding voice on another episode of Real Talk with Rhi. I shall see you guys in the next one. Bye.